Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. What are some truly scary experiences that you've been through? Creepy strangers, etc. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Close call for sure. One late night, my roommate and his girlfriend are doing it, and I decide I need to get out of the house. It's after 2 a.m., so I decide to drive to the casino, the only thing that will be open. I'm driving on the freeway when I run over some large pieces of cement that had fallen from the overpass into the road, and I get a flat tire. I pull over on the side of the freeway to examine the damage. I'm getting the jack and spare tire out of the trunk. I wake up, and I'm lying on my back in the middle of the freeway. There are sirens and flashing lights all around. There are road flares surrounding me. A cop is shining his flashlight in my face. I ask what happened. He tells me you were in an accident. I ask him how long was I unconscious for. He tells me about half an hour. I notice at this point that I'm about 30 or 40 feet from my car. They load me into an ambulance. They start cutting off my clothes, and I notice at this point that all my clothes are totally soaked in blood. The new white polo shirt I had just bought is now red with blood. My coat has a hole in it where I slid 30 feet on my side. I still have the coat. Maybe I will take a picture. The EMS guys tell me he's going to give me something for the pain. He puts a needle with morphine in my arm. I watch the plunger go down and I'm out like a light. I wake up for a second in an MRI or something, and a lady tells me to hold still. I fall back asleep and wake up in a hospital bed the next afternoon. Somehow, I suffered no major injuries. Some lady plowed into the back of my car, and my car hit me and threw me into the freeway. If she had hit me, it would have been crushed and most likely killed, since she hit my car going 60 or 70 miles per hour. I don't know how you can hit a car on the side of the road that has its emergency lights flashing, but whatever. Some people are ours, I guess. I do have occasional pains in my right leg. My car was totaled. The back axle broke off, and the entire exhaust system, muffler, etc. broke off. Thank God no one was sitting in the back seat, because those were pushed into the front seats. But I feel really lucky, because that same night, 2 other people died in a similar accident in Michigan. A friend of mine told me that one of her work colleagues was closing up shop alone one night. She goes to the park and notices her passenger window had been smashed. A guy comes up behind her and says he's seen the whole thing, and if she drives him to the police station, he'll give a statement for her. She declines because he's quite creepy, and he gets really persistent, telling her his brother is a mechanic and he'll change her window no problem. Again, she says no and tells him politely to leave her alone. He carries on, and someone who works in the same area, she's being hassled by this man, and comes over and tells him to F off or he'll call the police. The guy laughs and leaves, still laughing. She drove straight to the police station, and they inspected her car. They found a knife, some rope, and a bottle of vodka under the passenger seat. This happened about 3 months ago. Driving back from my then-girlfriend's house, it's 3 a.m. on the streets north of Atlanta. I pull up to a red light when I see a beat-to-hell 90s white Buick that wants to turn right onto the road that I was on, so that he would be in front of me. The light is green for him, but instead of turning onto the road, he just stops. Thinking something was strange, I waited until my light was green, and I head through the intersection. As soon as I pass, he gets right up on my ass. The next light is red, and as I come to a stop, he proceeds to get into the right turn lane and stop right next to me. I look over, and I see 4 grown black men all wearing red bandanas. Being a 19-year-old white kid, I get a little uneasy and take my foot off of the brakes. Then the driver of the Buick pulls out a 9mm to show it to me, and I just take off, driving around 100 in a 45 because, VTEC kicked in, and he's trying to catch up. Meanwhile, we are running red lights every 1/8 of a mile. We both get up to a major intersection, and I bank a hard right, and he doesn't follow. I didn't notice the adrenaline rush until I got home, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. This one probably isn't as scary as the others, but I'll share nonetheless. One night my boyfriend and I got ridiculously drunk. I don't remember what happened, but eventually we got into a huge fight and walked outside. Mind you, we're in Alaska, so there are moose everywhere. So we're yelling and screaming at each other in the middle of a parking lot of his apartment when out of nowhere a gigantic moose walks up to us. It was so close we could touch it. It stops to look at us. My boyfriend starts yelling at it, but eventually it just walks away. I got so scared I insisted we go back inside and talk out whatever conflict we had. The issue was resolved shortly thereafter, and he still apologizes about it to this day. Alaskan moose can be really aggressive, so that's why this story still freaks me out to this day. When I was about 14, my dad took my brother, 11, and me to a spot on the river that had a fun little rapid section on which we liked to float. My dad would let us roam free while he was getting hammered on buds. We wandered upstream for a little until we came to a spot on the river that was crossed by a dam. The dam was made of concrete and was submerged by an inch or so, which allows cars to cross the river over the dam. On one side of the dam were rapids. On the other side of the dam was the most pristine, calm pool you could imagine. It was about 100 degrees that day, and that pool looked amazingly refreshing. So I convinced my brother that we should jump in. Mistake. As soon as I jumped in, I was immediately sucked down and back toward the dam. I remember paddling while looking up and seeing the greenish light of day through the water while the bottom of my legs were sucked into who knows what. I'm a fairly strong swimmer and paddled furiously but to no avail. I came to the horrible conclusion that I just killed my brother and that we were being sucked into a pump, or that there would be a grate or something that would jam us underwater. When people describe seeing their lives flashing before their eyes, it's no joke. After what seemed like a minute, but in actuality was a second, I stopped swimming and accepted my fate. I felt the washboard of corrugated pipe bump my head as I flushed through the culvert. When I popped up on the other side of the dam, I immediately sought my brother. He popped up a second later bawling. I hugged him like I had never hugged him before. I thought we were dead. To this day, 25 years later, when we reminisce about that event, it gives us both cold chills. I was on a backpacking trip with my boyfriend, and we were staying at a sketchy hostel in Budapest. This wasn't a typical hostel setup, as the company that ran it simply bought up random rooms in apartment buildings around the city and directed us where to go. We ended up on the top floor of an old apartment complex. The way these old buildings work was that you were given one key that you would use to unlock the door from the outside, and then use the key again from the inside in order to lock the door again. I remember feeling a little bit sketched out, that the building seemed mostly abandoned, but the culture and old buildings weren't something I was used to. So we locked ourselves in and settled down for the night. I was coming out of the shower when I noticed a shadow on the opposite side of the front door. The top of the door was frosted glass, and I could make out a figure fussing with the lock. I called out to my boyfriend, and whoever was outside must have heard me, because they booked it out of there. We quickly packed up our things and made to leave, taking our key to unlock the door and exit. The door was already unlocked, and on the outside was a duplicate key, still in the keyhole. One summer night years ago, I had finished smoking weed in my bathroom, leaving the window open. I lived with my girlfriend and some other roommates, but I was alone smoking out. We had our own bathroom, which opened into our bedroom, where I was watching television. It was maybe 11 p.m. I was watching Conan or something. My bathroom door slowly begins to open, and I think, I didn't know my girlfriend was in that bathroom. Then a head peeks out, and I figure it's our roommate. Remember, I'm high. Well, it turns out to be some random-ass black guy with a do-rag. I sit up and calmly ask, "What the fuck are you doing in my house?" And he says to me the dumbest thing I've ever heard from a stranger in my house. "I'm a genie, man. You're dreaming. Go back to sleep." At this point, I stood up, walked toward the bathroom, and told him to get out of my house. I just kept saying that, maybe 3 or 4 times, as he climbed back out the window. I think I was too high to be scared or angry. After he left, the adrenaline kicked in, and I sat on my bed for a long moment, wondering how I would approach my roommates with this adventuresome tale. The kicker? About a week beforehand, sheriffs knocked on our door with a flyer, informing us that a S-offender was moving into the neighborhood. It had a poorly Xeroxed mugshot of what could have been any black man between the ages of 20 and 40. I think I never called the police because I was high. Last Saturday, my 4-year-old Yuji and I went to the store. We got our stuff and walked out to the car. Normally, I pushed the car out to the car, open Yuji's door, and let her climb in while I put my stuff in the trunk, then buckle her in and go. But for some reason that day, I just carried all the bags in my hands, and since I couldn't open the door with my hands full, Yuji stood at the trunk with me while I put the bags inside. Suddenly, I heard a car skidding. I looked up, and a car was jumping a curb and speeding toward us. I turned, my car was parked sideways relative to the car coming at us, and picked up Yuji, but there was no time to run out of the way. So I held her up. In that split second, I thought we were going to be hit for sure. So I held her up where, at most, her legs would be hit, but her head would be shielded from hitting the cement when we fell by my body. But I managed to dodge as the car hit our car to the left of us and kept going to the right of us. I saw it about 2 inches away from my body and was amazed I managed to dodge it. I watched the car gently bump another car as I ran over to some grass between the parking lot and street and just sat there for a moment, shocked. People were running over to us asking if we were okay. I kept saying we were fine and called my partner, since it's actually his car, and said a drunk driver or something just nearly ran over me and Yuji. Meanwhile, the people that had run up were calling the cops and stopping the guy that had hit my car. It turned out to be a really old guy. He parked and started walking into the store and had already forgotten anything had happened. Oof. After making sure we were okay, my partner asked how the car was. I said I hadn't even looked at it yet. Couldn't see the back from my angle in the grass, so I walked around. The entire back bumper was torn off from the way it was thrown on the ground. I have no idea how it didn't hit us. The door where Yuji would have normally been getting in was dented, and Yuji's car seat was thrown out of place. If she had been climbing in like normal, she would have been majorly hurt. The car was also thrown quite a bit, so if I had tried to run out of the way to the left, we would have been crushed by my car. If I had tried to run out of the way to the right, I would have been run over by the other car. In a moment like that, with a split second to make a decision, whatever choice you made was the right one, so let's be grateful for that. Some people might try to overuse a word miracle, but show me why that isn't one. When I was 14, myself and 2 friends, let's call them A and B, were heading over to friend A's house from my house. Friend A lived in a very shitty neighborhood, and I was very skeptical about going through there at night. If my parents were at home, they would have raged at me for even thinking about going through this neighborhood on foot at night. So anyway, we were about 15 minutes away from his, and as we turn a corner, we see this guy walking toward us, tall, skinny, with a hoodie on, and he seems to be in a rush. Friend B makes the dumb mistake of making eye contact with him as he passes. A couple of seconds later, he tells us that the guy's eyes looked all f***ed up and that his pupils were huge. We continue walking, and as we turn the next corner, I look back to see the dude had turned around and was following about 30 meters behind us. I tell friends A and B that he's behind us, and we're all a little paranoid. He continues following for about 5 minutes, and eventually I say, "Listen, let's just run for a few blocks and lose him." Just as I suggested this, I turn to look at him. The first thing I see is a glimpse of him running, eyes locked on friend B, who had made eye contact with him earlier. Then, I kid you not, the streetlight went out. We all simultaneously legged it up the street, almost getting hit by a car pulling into a driveway. Friend A starts yelling at the car, saying that someone's chasing us and that we need help. A man steps out of the car, and he's like 7 feet, and looks like he could bench a house. All I could think was, thank God. The dude got out of the car, pointed, and asked if that guy was the one following us. At this point, the creep had stopped running and was boxing with a telephone pole about 20 meters away, hands dripping blood, the creepiest thing I've ever seen a person do. We nodded our heads furiously, and the guy said, "Don't worry, I got this," and told us to go home. I effing love that guy. We bolted home and came back to thank that guy about a week later. We found out that the dude following us had been arrested for possession of crack. Ah, memories. When I was younger, I was playing in a river in New Hampshire. There is a natural water slide of sorts there. I was playing in another section of the river that had a fairly strong current. It swept my little body away, and as it took a dip, I got slightly airborne. That spot was narrow enough for me to stick out all 4 of my limbs and wedge myself between the rocks there. The rocks weren't high, but there was no way for me to get up. Wet rocks and barely holding myself up. And just down the river from me, I could see it got much wider and had a lot more sharp rocks. Luckily, I knew there were people in the area, so I shouted for help. Then above me appeared a lady who gasped and then pulled me out by one arm with the strength of 10 Incredible Hulks. Not a big lady by far. I caught my breath and thanked her. I then ran back to my family and didn't mention a thing. TLDR. As a child, I almost died getting swept away in a New Hampshire river. I was on a training exercise here in the US. We came over the beach in little boats, hit a target, and were moving back to the boats when we were engaged from the beach. I was holding one of the boats while others were going to get in them. When the gunfire started on the beach, everyone turned and engaged. A second later, a big wave came along and flipped the boat over, trapping me underneath. I was underwater, pressed against the sand, and no one saw me go under. I waited it out until the next swell came and tried to push forward, but my body armor had become stuck on the motor. I had to wait another swell, still hadn't gotten a breath of air, until the boat lifted. I ditched my armor and got out from under the boat. I come up out of the water to a scene of total chaos, with a full-blown gun battle occurring all around me. I'm shaking, almost drowning to death, and I don't have enough strength to pull myself into the upright boat, so I get dragged through the surf zone, holding onto the side of the boat again, mostly underwater. I got onto the fast attack craft, so shaken and effed up that I couldn't talk to anyone for at least half an hour.